sharper marketing, unsolicited marketing for Cadillac. Funny enough, we're getting into the dealership experience part 2.
Look at this, look at that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, look at this. You know, when I see a car like this, first thing I do is I say, would you look at this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Look, just sip it, you'll be fine. You going to sing? Sing for us.
Oh, could anyone?
And Champagne, why have you got 2 pairs of sunglasses?
Louis, it's his image. That's my
two
image. Bit of bling, guitar.
So Champagne, will you sing, please?
Mike check for News Chopper 4. We're over a high-speed police pursuit in Laverne. We're on the westbound 210 freeway. Westbound 210 freeway. He's completely blacked out and driving at about 130 miles an hour plus. It's a Corvette. The want is...
I'm the Secretary of State. Brought to you by Carl's Jr.
Why do you keep saying that?
Because they pay me every time I do. It's a really good way to make money. You're so smart, why don't you know that?
Get out the fucking checkbook! Come on down the Bugs down the auto!
Exiting here off of the 210 freeway. We're on Vernon Avenue. He really hasn't been on surface streets during this pursuit. He was on the 210 East. He turned around then and got on the 210 West. And then prior to that, he was on the 60 freeway. Originally, it was Pomona Police.
There's nothing going on, Stuart.
Sit down. Get back on San Vicente, take it to the 10, then switch over to the 405 North and let it dump you out into Mulholland where you belong.
If we continue with our kind of mental health for a few generations more, then I think we are at a point where psychologically any productive society would break up and deteriorate.
I think the struggle for those of us in America is to conceive of our identity as part of something larger, something more meaningful than ourselves. There's very little support for that in our culture, in our economy, in our politics. But without it, the country splits apart, fragments, atomizes. So this is in America a very loaded word.
Statisticians report that television is watched over 6 hours a day in the average American household. Actually, I have never seen an average American household, except on TV. If we want to know what American normality is, what Americans want to regard as normal, we can trust television. For television's whole raison is reflecting what people want to see. It's a mirror.
The problem with this country is consumption. We consume too much.
Buy the ticket. Take the ride.
I'm continually disappointed by American marketers and the kind of insane, out-of-touch stuff that they put out there with no regard as to the kind of imagined, everybody or nobody that they're trying to sell to, and then what that implication might be of their projection onto these people. And let's say it's no different than a bad screenwriter writing a bad, newscast, or what's it called? Fiction? News? It's called news, but what's the other fiction they write? Movies.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Why do you downgrade acting as a profession over the years?
What makes you think I do?
Well, I've read it in the press. Saw it in black and white. I can't believe the press. I don't know what we can believe in this country.
We may be hearing about real life on television shows made up of 15-second sound bites, in which real people not only speak in brief, neat truisms, but actually seem to think that way, perhaps as a result of having watched too much reality-molding television themselves. American human beings are a slippery and protean bunch, in real life. What Americans are, want, see. What we as audience want to see ourselves as. Television, from the surface on down, is about desire. Fictionally speaking, desire is the sugar in human food.
You know what I mean, though you've said over the years it's not a fit profession for a man.
In an effort to help your ratings,
Don't worry about it.
I'll maybe say something. I think that we couldn't survive a second if we weren't able to act. That acting is a survival mechanism, and it's a social unguent, and it's a lubricant.
Do you think that American society is a realistic society?
Indeed, I don't think that at all. I think we are probably one of the most unrealistic societies which have ever lived under the sun.
Now, in what respects?
Well, we kid ourselves about love, we kid ourselves about our aims, we kid ourselves about our individuality, when actually we are conforming all the time.
And we act to save our lives, actually, every day. People lie constantly, every day, by not saying something that they think, or saying something that they don't think, or showing something that they don't feel, or trying to give the appearance of feeling something that they don't actually. I said that, didn't I?
Yeah, but that's not acting.
That is acting. That is
No, it
precise.
isn't.
Yes, it is.
But you know what I mean.
Right, when they write movies, you think of all the stupid stereotypes of Americans in movies. And you guys have been making us look like jerk-offs for a long time. You've been making us look stupid for a long time. So it's really embarrassing, the images that our media puts forth to the world.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The content is, it's embarrassing, because these shows that we watch are one of the reasons why we are the way we are. These shows help to make us the scared, ineffectual, bumbling, coarse society that we are. Now, you may want to watch these things. You know, you might think that Dallas and MTV is something really good to have in your country, but at your own peril.
In what starts out as a mean pop music article, knows perfectly well what's behind what he hates. Pop music is no longer a world unto itself, but an adjunct of television, whose stream of commercial images projects a culture in which everything is for sale and the only images that count are fame, power, and the body beautiful. This stuff just goes on in the Times. The only arts and leisure piece I could find with anything upbeat to say about TV that morning was a breathless article on how lots of Ivy League graduates are now flying straight from school to New York and Los Angeles to become television writers and are clearing well over $200,000 to start and enjoying rapid advancement to harried clipboarded production status.
When you're frightened or when you're nervous, when you're frightened and nervous in this chair, you're distressed or uncomfortable or you're very angry.
Yeah.
And you know that that is not what is necessary to well, what cannot be shown here. You control your face. You're a highly controlled person. And
really?
And you have to do that.
Would you say that the great majority of the people, therefore, are non-productive rather than productive? With this
I'm afraid that is so, that productive people today are the exception. And that doesn't mean that the majority of people are not artists and writers or scientists or anything like that. In fact, what it means only is that they are not authentic, that what they feel, what they think, what they do is not the result of an activity in them, but of something they are told, but told not even usually directly, but by implication, by signals. We obey today by signals, while 100 years ago we obeyed because we were told that's what you have to do, and if you don't, you will see what happens. This was a much cruder, but in fact a much healthier method.
But in a way, in a subtle way, it's the same thing again.
Yes, it's worse, because how can I protest, how can I know that this I want and this I don't want if I'm never told I have to do this. I prefer to be told, then I know that I obey, rather than to get signals which operate in a subliminal or indirect or unconscious way, like in an animal experiment.
The self-conscious appearance of unself-consciousness is the grand illusion behind TV's mirror hall of illusions, and for us, the audience, it is both medicine and poison. In a real Joe Briefcase type world that shifts ever more starkly from some community of relationships to networks of strangers connected by self-interest and contest and image, the people we espy on TV offer us familiarity, community, intimate friendship, but we split what we see. And yet both actors and characters, so terribly removed and filtered, seem so natural when we watch.
You have spoken of this lack of realism as one thing in our society working against mental health. Are there other things?
Yes, Mr. Smith, I would say practically everything.
The reality is invented for you by people who choreograph it. There's got to be an office in Washington someplace where a bunch of people that you never heard of choreograph reality. It's not just what the next photo op is going to be. It's what is the interpretation of a given international event. And this has to be generally dispensed through the media with no questions asked.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Our culture is concerned primarily with production and consumption of things.
When I'm a corporation, appealing to the parts of you that are selfish and self-centered and want to have fun all the time is the best way to sell you things, right? I think one more example of American economic and cultural systems that work very well in terms of selling people products and keeping the economy thriving do not work as well when it comes to educating children or helping us help each other know how to live and to be happy, if that word means anything. Clearly it means something different from whatever I want to do. I want to take this cup and throw it right now. I have every right to. I should. You know, I mean, that we've seen it. We see it with children. That's not happiness. That feeling of having to obey every impulse and gratify every desire it seems to me to be a strange kind of slavery. Nobody talks about it as such, though. It talks about freedom of choice, and you have the right to have things, and spend this much money and you can have this stuff. Again, saying it this way, it sounds to me very crude and very simple, but that's sort of the way.
And in this process of being primarily concerned with things, their ever-increasing production, their ever-increasing consumption, we ourselves transform ourselves into things without knowing it.
The fibrous TC will forever break the broadcast bottleneck of television's one active, many passive structure of image propagation. Now, everybody'll get to be his own harried guy with headphones and clipboard. In the new millennium, US television will finally become ideally, GOP-ishly democratic, egalitarian, interactive, and profitable without being exploitative. Boy, does Gilder know his larger agenda audience. You can just see saliva overflowing lower lips in boardrooms as Gilder forecasts that the consumer's whole complicated, fuzzy, inconveniently transient world will become broadcastable, manipulable, storable, and viewable in the comfort of his own condo. But the analogy between television and liquor is best, I think, because I'm afraid Joe Briefcase is a teleholic. Watching TV can become malignantly addictive. TV may become malignantly addictive only once a certain threshold of quantity is habitually passed, but then the same is true of whiskey. And by malignant and addictive, I again do not mean evil or coercive. An activity is addictive if one's relationship to it lies on that downward sloping continuum between liking it a little too much and downright needing it. Many addictions, from exercise to letter writing, are pretty benign. But something is malignantly addictive if 1. It causes real problems for the addict, and 2. It offers itself as relief from the very problems it causes.
Friends, fun, drink, hot girls, you're hot, drink more, expensive cars, ass, drink, ass, money, you in a tuxedo, threesome, vodka, drink, you, drink, Vegas.
But how is that possible? It's very simple. The ad gets into your brain just like this liquid gets into this egg.
Vodka, drink it all, you pussy! More tuxedos, more cars, more pussy, more vodka, drink! Please drink responsibly.
Different quality content footage. We're talking about marketers and marketing, and I was saying that I'm not really happy with the image presented by not just modern marketers, but even guys like Seth Godin. Simon Sinek's another guy, and the reason why is because I've kind of hinted at it so far in these other videos vaguely, but they're kind of like leaders without leading.
We lose our individuality in spite of the fact that we talk a lot about it. We follow leaders who don't lead. We believe that we are acting on our own impulses and convictions and opinions when actually we are manipulated by a whole industry, by slogans, and yet nobody has any true aim. We are alienated from ourselves. We don't feel much, certainly we don't feel intensely. All we are after is not to be different, and we are frightened to death to be just 2 feet away from the herd. And yet we are deceiving ourselves about this reality by talking all the time in terms of our traditional heritage, of the Judeo-Christian tradition, of humanistic philosophy, of individuality, and whatnot.
Family, religion, friendship. These are the 3 demons you must slay if you wish to succeed in business. When opportunity knocks, you don't want to be driving to the maternity hospital or sitting in some phony baloney church or synagogue. Questions?
I think I'm gonna be sick.
Oh, a spoonful of slurry will cure what ails ya.
Oh, you haven't changed at all. You're still evil, and when you're trying to be good, you're even more evil.
I don't understand. Pigs need food. Engines need coolant. Dynamiters need dynamite. I'm supplying it to them at a tidy profit, and not a single sea creature was wasted. You inspired it all?
And you know what? It is murder on the dance floor. Whatever you do, don't kill the groove.
I mean, more choice means more of the same. Because the minute somebody comes up with something which is successful, the natural instinct of the American is to imitate it and just clone it and beat it to death.
I'm gonna sell you the solution that I think you'll accept, and I'll pander. Oh my God, we will pander and placate day and night. There's not enough bread and circus for this country and these people. I probably shouldn't say that. There's not enough bread and circus for us.
By 1830, de Tocqueville had already diagnosed American culture as peculiarly devoted to easy sensation and mass-marketed entertainment.
Not these people. I'll include me in there.
As far as there is authoritarianism today, in the overt sense, I think masochistic and sadistic elements are in it, just as I try to describe them. But I think authoritarianism overt authoritarianism is yielding to covert authoritarianism today, namely to the manipulation of men by signals.
The authoritarian pattern of escape is gradually diminishing into the automaton pattern that
That's
you talked
right.
about.
That's right. And
I know a few Bundys myself. But the interesting thing about Bundy-like characters in all sitcoms, the universal rule of all sitcoms is fathers are weak, fathers are bad, mothers are wise. Now, this has been with us since the 50s. And this has sent a very bad psychological message to the entire society. It has made fatherhood almost a criminal activity. And a lot of people would be dissuaded from ever becoming a dad based on the images that are presented to the public from American television shows. And this goes all over the world.
Miller describes nicely how the 1960s sitcom, like the westerns that preceded them, negated the increasing powerlessness of white-collar males with images of paternal strength and manly individualism. Yet by the time these sitcoms were produced, the world of small business, whose virtues were the Hugh Beaumontish ones of self-possession, probity, and sound judgment, had long since been superseded by what C. Wright Mills called the managerial demiurge.
The motto says that we aim to please. First impressions are important to us all. First impressions will show you what you always wanted to see. First impressions, commercials that are guaranteed.
Nobody's got a family, because who wants to hang out with a dad? Dads are like Bundys. And if the dad does exist, the person who actually caused the child to appear someplace, well, he didn't think it was very much fun, so he left this little creature with the mother, and he went out to do something more interesting.
I am a modern day boy. I'm the child of our times. I am my dad's pride and joy. There's so much that we share when we find a moment to spare.
And the virtues personified by Dad were in fact passé. In other words, early US TV was a hypocritical apologist for values whose reality had become attenuated in a period of corporate ascendancy, bureaucratic entrenchment, foreign adventurism, racial conflict, secret bombing, assassination, wiretaps, etc. It's not one bit accidental that postmodern fiction aimed its ironic crosshairs at the banal, the naive, the sentimental and simplistic and conservative, for these qualities were just what 60s TV seemed to celebrate as American.
The pattern of escape is gradually diminishing into the automaton pattern that
That's
you talked
right.
about.
That's right, and I want to be very clear. I think this development is not only likely in the Soviet Union, I'm afraid it's also happening here. In other words, that here too, in our industrial bureaucracy, while we pay lip service to individuality, to private enterprise, private and individual initiative and so on, we also get more and more into a bureaucratically organized society in which really the average person is the organization man. That is to say, the man who has escaped into automaton conformity.
Yeah. What is my purpose?
Pass the butter. Thank you.
And you know what? American dads lived up to the image. They eventually became just as stupid and ineffectual as... there's plenty of real Bundys out there. That's the reason why that show resonates. But there are real Bundys out there because there were many predecessors to the Bundy character.
So you think it was very much it's life following art, not art capturing the reality of the American family?
I think that it's a loop.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my God.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
We have moved into it, I think, here and in the Soviet Union, into a more and more bureaucratic system in which, with the illusion of independence, man becomes more and more little cog in the machine, little organization man.
And so, therefore, the squadron. And MTV is showing us the new family unit. Then again, if you live in a neighborhood where they don't have gangs, your other options are you belong to the football team, which is another kind of a gang, or you belong to some other thing which is not a family.
And do you think this is different than, hasn't always happened with with baseball teams or with social clubs, or just this thing it's coming to a younger age group now? How does the MTV thing focus? Does it just make it much more tighter pressure on the kids to actually...
I don't think MTV puts pressure on them to abandon the family. I just don't think that there are any families left. I mean, that's obviously an exaggeration, but the family is an endangered species in this country.
In the early 50s, you predicted that the world was becoming a global village.
We're going back into the bicameral mind, which is tribal, collective, without any individual consciousness.
But it seems, Dr. McLuhan, that this tribal world is not friendly.
Oh no, tribal people, one of their main kinds of sport is sort of butchering each other. It's, you know, it's a full-time sport in tribal societies.
I had some ideas. We got global and tribal. We were going to become
the closer you get together, the more you like each other.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of that in any situation that we've ever heard of. That when people get close together, they get more and more savagely impatient with each other.
Well, why is that? Because of the nature of man, or
his tolerance is tested in those narrow circumstances very much. Village people aren't that much in love with each other. And the global village is a place of very arduous interfaces and very abrasive situations.
Is this distancing, is this going to be a pattern right around the world?
Apparently, separatisms are very frequent all over the globe at the present time. Every country in the world is loaded with regionalistic, nationalistic little groups. All forms of violence are a quest for identity. When you live out on the frontier, you have no identity. You're a nobody. Therefore, you get very tough. You have to prove that you are somebody. And so you become very violent. And so identity is always accompanied by violence. This it seems paradoxical to you, that ordinary people find the need for violence as they lose their identities. So it's only the threat to people's identity that makes them violence. Terrorists, hijackers, these are people minus identity. They are determined to make it somehow, to get coverage, to get noticed.
And all this is somehow an effect of the electronic age?
Oh no, but people in all times have been this way. Mm-hmm. But in our time, when things happen very quickly, there's very little time to adjust to new situations at the speed of light. There's very little time to get accustomed to anything. One of the big violence makers of our century has been radio.
The investigations now of the CIA and the FBI and even our own, God forbid, RCMP, has this anything to do with the electronic age?
Well, yes, because we now have the means to keep everybody under surveillance. No matter what part of the world they're in, we can put them under surveillance. It has become one of the main occupations of mankind, just watching other people and keeping a record of their goings-on.
And invading privacy.
Invading privacy, in fact, just ignoring it. Everybody has become porous. They got the light and the messages go right through us. As, by the way, at this moment,
right,
we are on the air, and on the air we do not have any physical body. When you're on the telephone or on radio or on TV, you don't have a physical body. You're just an image on the air. When you don't have a physical body, you're a discarnate being. You have a very different relation to the world around you. And this, I think, has been one of the big effects of the electric age. It has deprived people, really, of their private identity.
So that's what this is doing to me?
Yes. Everybody tends to merge his identity with other people at the speed of light. It's called being mass man. By the way, one of the big marks of the loss of identity is nostalgia. And so revivals on all hands in every phase of life today. Revivals of clothing, of dances, of music, of shows, of everything. We live by the revival. It tells us who we are or were.
Do you feel that the fact that you and I have enjoyed the rewards of literacy, that we are more protected against television than...
Yes, I think you get a certain immunity. However, literacy also, though, makes us very accessible to ideas and propaganda. The literate man is the natural sucker for propaganda. Therefore, propaganda is our Achilles heel. It's our weak point. We will buy anything if it's got a good hard sell tied to it.
What now, briefly, is this thing called media ecology?
It means arranging various media to help each other so they won't cancel each other out, to buttress one medium with another. You might say, for example, that radio is a bigger help to literacy than television. Mm-hmm. But television might be a very wonderful aid to teaching languages. And so you can do some things on some media that you cannot do on others. And therefore, if you watch the whole field, you can prevent this waste that comes by one canceling the other out.
In concepts
I seek to perceive, not to conceive what's in front of me. And perception is exploration. And you do not know from one moment to the next what you're going to discover. It's all excitement and all discovery.
You've also said clear prose indicates an absence of thought. This
Clear
seems
prose,
to me to a contempt for the intellectual processes. Which
there
you
is a
should believe in.
saying. There is a saying of Thoreau. He said, "The snowdrift is the lull in the wind. The institution is the lull in thought." When you can't think anymore, you establish an institution. When the wind stops blowing, the snowdrift forms. But these are not cynical remarks, they're studies of processes. And the purpose of studying processes is to avoid various kinds of hang-ups, miseries.
The purpose of communication surely is trying to illuminate
most people do,
what goes on in human life.
Most people never communicate. Most people never communicate in their entire lives. They think that what they say is communication. The communication is the effect of what you say. It's not what you say, it's the effect of what you say. Most people only discover the effect of what they say when they read the answers on the examination questions. Preface to a new book which begins, all of man's artifacts of language, of laws, of ideas, hypotheses, tools, clothing, computers, all of these are extensions of our physical bodies.
As a society, we are bombarded with sci-fi tragedies of AI technology gone awry, which feeds the fear of the masses. Often quoted out of context, McLuhan originally meant for his quote to mean that man is not a separate entity to be used by machines. We are actually the reason machines have a purpose to evolve. Akin to nature, AIs are the flowers and we are the pollinating bees. McLuhan really wanted to emphasize that our innate desire to synthesize meaning from experiences becomes the driving force for the evolution of technology, which drives a new type of consciousness through our technological creations. There's a constant debate where people think that machines can become conscious by themselves, versus that they can only evolve with human interaction. It is the same dichotomy between humanity's need for control versus the evolution of AI into an uncontrollable state.
The effect that advertising seeks is an effect of satisfaction with a huge environment of services. Advertising is itself an enormous establishment of satisfactions. In fact, most people would not know what the meaning of their possessions was without advertising. Because, you see, suddenly, if you notice, the mood of North America has changed very drastically. Things like the safety car couldn't have happened 10 years ago.
Why is that?
Now, it's because people have suddenly become obsessed with consequences of things. They used to be obsessed with mere products and packages and launching these things out into markets and into the public. Now they've suddenly become concerned about what happens when these things go out on the highway. What happens when this kind of program gets on the air? They want safety air, safety cigarettes, safety cars, and safety programming. This need for safety is a sudden awareness that things have effects. Now, my writing has for years been concerned with the effects of things, not their impact, but their consequences after impact. TV, unlike the fantasy world, the escape world of the movies, TV creates enormously serious and realistic-minded sort of person, well, almost oriental in his inward meditativeness. I think
this is the teenager of today.
Yes, he's becoming almost oriental in his inwardness.
He's so thoughtful and serious.
Yeah, grim. Whereas the movie generations of the 20s and 30s were a coon-coated bunch of superficial types, had a good time, and went to college, but not for knowledge and that sort of thing. All has changed.
And changed because of television, because
very much. Television gave the old electric circuitry that is already here, gave it a huge extra push in this direction of involvement and inwardness. You see, the circuit doesn't just simply push things out for inspection. It pushes you in to the circuit. It involves you.
But you see, there does seem to be a central contradiction here in your theory, Professor McLuhan.
Without a contradiction, there could be no polarity.
Well, can I tell you what I see it as being? And that is that you've written about the world of electronic all-at-onceness, the global village in which everybody is gathered together by means of television or the new electronic media.
Telegraph.
And yet, there seems to me to be a fearful danger of loss of individuality and identity here.
And say cheese. Now, this means, am I putting on an audience, or am I just by myself? And so, when you are putting on a public, then you have a totally different image of yourself than when you are all alone. When you're naked, it's very different from being nude in front of an audience like a stripteaser.
But isn't this a serious danger that you foresee, this lack of identity, loss of identity?
Danger is of the very element that we live in the 20th century, and extinction is the immediate possibility every hour of the day.
Well, one's conscious of this, but aren't these the things to be combated? And
I myself would prefer a somewhat more relaxed existence. I never state my preferences because it seems arrogant to me to express a private opinion in a world in which you live with everybody.
But surely private opinions are those which in the end have influenced human conduct.
They may
change history.
You might as well shout fire. That's a private opinion.
If there's a fire, it's a good idea to shout
Except
fire.
that it creates panic.
But maybe panic is necessary. You know the story about Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde told of the manager of a theatre who went onto the stage and said to the audience, "Now, fire has broken out, but please don't panic, stay where you are."
Yes.
And everybody was burnt to death.
On the other hand, it might have cooled the situation sufficiently to get
didn't
the people out of the house. I'm interested in that, but cooling is a process and hotting up is merely a target.
Professor McEwen, thank you very much indeed.
US pop culture is just like US serious culture in that its central tension has always set the nobility of individualism on one side against the warmth of communal belonging on the other. For its first 20 or so years, it seemed as though television sought to appeal mostly to the group side of the equation. Communities and bonding were extolled on early TV, even though TV itself, and especially its advertising, has from the outset projected itself at the lone viewer, Joe Briefcase, alone. Television commercials always make their appeals to individuals, not groups, a fact that seems curious in light of the unprecedented size of TV's audience, until one hears gifted salesmen explain how people are always most vulnerable, hence frightened, hence needy, hence persuadable, when they are approached solo. Classic television commercials were all about the group. They took the vulnerability of Joe Briefcase, sitting there, watching, lonely, and capitalized on it by linking purchase of a given product with Joe B's inclusion in some attractive community. I'm anxious to avoid anti-TV paranoia here, though I'm convinced that television lies, with a potency somewhere between symptom and synecdote, behind a genuine crisis for US culture and lit today. I don't share reactionary adults' vision of TV as some malignancy visited on an innocent populace, sapping IQs and compromising SAT scores, while we all sit there on ever fatter bottoms with little mesmerized spirals revolving in our eyes. Because conservative critics like Samuel Huntington and Barbara Tuchman, who try to claim that TV's lowering of our aesthetic standards is responsible for a contemporary culture taken over by commercialism directed to the mass market and necessarily to mass taste, can be refuted by observing that their propter hoc isn't even post hoc. By 1830, de Tocqueville had already diagnosed American culture as peculiarly devoted to easy sensation and mass-marketed entertainment, spectacles vehement and untutored and rude, that aimed to stir the passions more than to gratify the taste. It's undeniable that television is an example of low art, the sort of art that tries too hard to please. Because of the economics of nationally broadcast, advertiser-subsidized entertainment, television's one goal, never denied by anybody in or around TV since RCA first authorized field tests in 1936, is to ensure as much watching as possible. TV is the epitome of low art in its desire to appeal to and enjoy the attention of unprecedented numbers of people. But TV is not low because it is vulgar or prurient or stupid. It is often all these things, but this is a logical function of its need to please audience. And I'm not saying that television is vulgar and dumb because the people who compose audience are vulgar and dumb. Television is the way it is simply because people tend to be really similar in their vulgar and prurient and stupid interests and wildly different in their refined and moral and intelligent interests. It's all about syncretic diversity, neither medium nor viewers are responsible for quality. Still, for the fact that American humans consume vulgar, prurient, stupid stuff at the sobering clip of 6 hours a day, for this both TV and we need to answer. We are responsible, basically, because nobody is holding any weapons on us, forcing us to spend amounts of time, second only to sleep, doing something that is, when you come right down to it, not good for us. Sorry to sound judgmental, but there it is. 6 hours a day is not good. Television's biggest minute-by-minute appeal is that it engages without demanding. One can rest while undergoing stimulation, receive without giving. In this respect, television resembles other things mothers call special treats, e.g. candy or liquor. Treats that are basically fine and fun in small amounts, but bad for us in large amounts, and really bad for us if consumed as any kind of nutritive staple. One can only guess what volume of gin or poundage of Toblerone 6 hours of special treat a day would convert to. On the surface of the problem, television is responsible for our rate of its consumption only in that it's become so terribly successful at its acknowledged job of ensuring prodigious amounts of watching. Its social accountability seems sort of like that of designers of military weapons, unculpable right up until they get a little too good at their job.
Have to be seen as a thing that goes to everybody. That's the problem with the broadcast medium.
Well, the problem with that concept is that the image of the everybody that they plan for is such a work of fiction. And I can't imagine how they concocted this imaginary everybody. Some very sick people dreamed up this particular everybody because we could work backwards from the programming and deduce what the mentality of this imaginary everybody is like. And he would be one sick bastard, a total basket case, incapable of being a functional member of any society. You just look at the programming and deduce backwards from the images that you see on the air. Who did they plan this for? And what could that denizen be?
I have a shopping addiction. You wouldn't understand.
Oh, try me, Bree.
It was so hard.
A malignant addiction is also distinguished for spreading the problems of the addiction out and in interference patterns, creating difficulties for relationships, communities, and the addict's very sense of self and soul. The hyperbole might strain the analogy for you, but concrete illustrations of malignant TV watching cycles aren't hard to come by. If it's true that many Americans are lonely, and if it's true that many lonely people are prodigious TV watchers, and if it's true that lonely people find in television's 2D images relief from the pain of their reluctance to be around real humans, then it's also obvious that the more time spent watching TV, the less time spent in the real human world, and the less time spent in the real human world, the harder it becomes not to feel alienated from real humans, solipsistic, lonely. It's also true that to the extent one begins to view pseudo-relationships with Bud Bundy or Jane Pauley as acceptable alternatives to relationships with real humans, one has commensurately less conscious incentive even to try to connect with real 3D persons, connections that are pretty important to mental health. For Joe Briefcase, as for many addicts, the special treat of TV begins to substitute for something nourishing and needed, and the original hunger subsides to a strange objectless unease. TV watching as a malignant cycle doesn't even require special preconditions like writerly self-consciousness or loneliness. Let's for a second imagine Joe Briefcase as now just average, relatively unlonely, adjusted, married, blessed with 2.5 apple-cheeked issue, normal, home from hard work at 5:30, starting his average 6-hour stint. Since Joe B is average, he'll shrug at pollsters' questions and say he most often watches television to unwind from those elements of his day and life he finds stressful. It's tempting to suppose that TV enables this unwinding simply because it offers an Auschlanderian distraction, something to divert the mind from quotidian troubles. But would mere distraction ensure continual massive watching? Television offers more than distraction. In lots of ways, television purveys and enables dreams, and most of these dreams involve some sort of transcendence of average daily life. The modes of presentation that work best for TV, stuff like action, with shootouts and car wrecks, or the rapid-fire collage of commercials, news, and music videos, or the hysteria of primetime soap and sitcom with broad gestures, high voices, too much laughter, are unsubtle in their whispers that, somewhere, life is quicker, denser, more interesting, more, well, lively than contemporary life as Joe Briefcase knows and moves through it. This might seem benign until we consider that what average Joe Briefcase does more than almost anything else in contemporary life is watch television, an activity which anyone with an average brain can see does not make for a very dense and lively life. Since television must seek to compel attention by offering a dreamy promise of escape from daily life, and since stats confirm that so grossly much of ordinary US life is watching TV, TV's whispered promises must somehow undercut television watching in theory. Joe, there's a world where life is lively, where nobody spends 6 hours a day unwinding before a piece of furniture. While reinforcing television watching in practice, Joe, your best and only access to this world is TV.
Now you've got to tell us about one show. We're going to go and shoot The Young and the Restless.
The soaps are something that I'm not familiar with because they run them during the day and I'm working. So I have on 2 occasions left tapes running so that I could look at it just to see what it was. And it's a pretty strange message. I think that you'll be inspired by what you find.
Do you think it's
Because the Mr. Everybody that they're dealing with there is not a Mr. Everybody, it's a Mrs. Everybody or a Ms. Everybody. And the calculations that they've made in the story meetings to put these things together about what these special people are interested in, what are their secret desires, and what will keep their attention long enough that you can sell them stuff. The subtext of all of the soap operas are really pretty disturbing.
Is it sort of Ken and Barbie moving and talking? Is it that sort of...
No, there's a lot of bad sex and betrayal and just turgid flux, I think would be the best way to describe it.
I'm leaving you, Wesley.
But why?
You haven't noticed me in 2 years.
I was in a coma.
Well, I still deserve appreciation.
Who was there for you when you had amnesia?
Ugh, you know I can't remember that.
Stop this madness. If it's appreciation you want, you should both get Snapshot from Progressive. It rewards good drivers with big discounts on car insurance.
I have news. I've used most of our cellular data.
Oh, come on, Susan Lucci!
It makes sense to me, of course.
And it works very well as a system for running an economy and keeping goods produced and sold, and it works wonderfully. The ways in which it doesn't work are much more difficult to talk about.
So what would, I mean, yeah, you said it's but when, speaking of that, where doesn't it work?
One's reduced to talking, I think, about general terms like being grown up, or a term that's rarely used here anymore. And see, and now I feel embarrassment because I'm going to sound like my grandfather or something. But the word citizen, the idea of being a citizen, it would be to understand your country's history and the things about it that are good and not so good and how the system works, and taking the trouble to learn about candidates for political office, which means often reading stuff, which isn't fun. Sometimes it's boring. But when people don't do that, here's what happens. The candidates win who have the most money to buy television advertisements, because television advertisements are all most voters know about the candidates. Therefore, we get candidates who are beholden to large donors and become, in some ways, corrupt, which disgusts the voters and makes the voters even less interested in politics, less willing to read and do the work and do the work of citizenship.
And this is
when I was a little boy, there was a class called citizenship. And, here are certain things about America and America's history. Here's why it's important to vote. Here's why it's important not just to go in and vote for who the best-looking candidate is. Here's what's really interesting, and I don't know if you can translate this. Talking about this now, I feel ashamed. Because my saying all this sounds to me like an older person saying this, like a person lecturing, which in American culture sets me up to be ridiculed. It would be very easy to make fun of what I'm saying. You know, it'd be very, very easy to make fun of what I'm saying, and I can hear in my head a voice making fun of this stuff as I'm saying it. And this is the kind of paradox, I think, of what it is, of what it is to be a halfway intelligent American right now, and probably also a Western European, is that there are things we know are right and good and would be better for us to do, but constantly it's like, yeah, but you know, it's so much funnier and nicer to go do something else, and who cares, and it's all bullshit anyway. And, sorry about that.
No, but it's the same dilemma actually in Germany, with people wanting to say something and knowing at the same time it is this intellectual stereotype, but on the other hand, you can't forget about it. I mean, and
one of the things it causes is tension and unhappiness in people. I don't think it's very complicated, and I don't think I've named the only reason for it. The paradox is that sort of tension and complication and conflict in people also makes them very easy to market to, because I can say to you, feeling uneasy, life feels empty. Well, here's something you can buy or something you can go do. It makes us. It makes for the economics term is inelasticity of demand. I demand all the time, no matter what the price of it is, and it works really well in an economic way, emotionally, spiritually, in terms of citizenship, in terms of feeling like a meaningful part even of this country. Forget the world, you know. And I'm sure the U.S. government's sort of arrogance and disdain for the rest of the world is unpleasant, but it's also a natural extension of certain cultural messages we send ourselves about ourselves that work very well in some ways and make us very rich and very powerful. It's all complicated.
I think there's a nostalgia for families as an institution, but they're rapidly fading away. And what MTV is doing is just portraying the destruction, not causing the destruction. But it's certainly, the way I look at it, I see evidence in the staging of those videos that it's all about wild kids in the street roaming in packs, huddling together for protection against the hostile outside world. That's the subtext of a lot of it.
And then along comes the family network.
I would say this, very briefly. Man is a freak of nature, because at the same time he is an animal, and at the same time is the only case of life having awareness of himself. This in itself, this situation of having awareness of himself and yet being in the body of an animal, would create a tremendous sense of separateness and fright. Therefore, man has to look for some union, and he can do it in two ways. He can either regress or he can progress. By regress, I mean he can try to be an animal again, to do away with awareness and reason, or he can try to develop his human powers to such an extent that he finds new unity. Well, this is only a very brief statement, but I want to elaborate with regard to this point. Now, the person who cannot live productively, who cannot create at all, nevertheless does not want to be a passive person, like dice thrown out of a cup. He wants to transcend. Now, one way is to create, and here we have the productive person. Create in some way, even if it is something I do with my hands, a simple thing. But if I cannot create, I transcend my creature status also if I destroy. Mm-hmm. To destroy life is as much of a transcendence of life as to create it. Mm-hmm. To create requires conditions of interest, of capacity, many conditions. To destroy requires only one thing, a pistol or a strong arm, if your opponent is weaker. But in the process of destruction, I also fulfill the desire to transcend life, to transcend my passive creature status, and I triumph over life. It is my vengeance, you might say my vengeance against life, for not permitting me to be oriented to it productively. And therefore I think destructiveness is one of the deepest forms of mental pathology.
Get up! You can do it!
Throw the mattress in there. Oh shit. What the fuck?
But since at latest the 80s, the individualist side of the great US conversation has held sway in TV advertising. I'm not sure just why or how this happened. There are probably great connections to be traced, with Vietnam, youth cultures, Watergate and recession, and the new right's rise. But the relevant datum is that a lot of the most effective TV commercials now make their appeal to the lone viewer in a terribly different way. Products are now most often pitched as helping the viewer express himself, assert his individuality, stand out from the crowd. Except for being sillier, products billed as distinguishing individuals from crowds sell to huge crowds of individuals. These ads aren't really any more complicated or subtle than the old join the fulfilling crowd ads that now seem so quaint. But the new standout ads' relation to their chiaroscuro mass of lone viewers is both complex and ingenious. Today's best ads are still about the group, but they now present the group as something fearsome, something that can swallow you up, erase you, keep you from being noticed. But noticed by whom? Crowds are still vitally important in the stand-apart ads' thesis on identity, but now give an ad's crowd, far from being more appealing, secure, and alive than the individual, functions as a mass of identical, featureless eyes. The crowd is now, paradoxically, both the herd in contrast to which the viewer's distinctive identity is to be defined, and the impassive witnesses whose sight alone can confer distinctive identity. The lone viewer's isolation in front of his furniture is implicitly applauded. It's better, realer, these solipsistic ads imply, to fly solo, and yet also implicated as threatening, confusing, since after all, Joe Briefcase is not an idiot, sitting here, and knows himself as a viewer to be guilty of the two big sins the ads decry, being a passive watcher of TV and being part of a great herd of TV watchers and stand-apart product buyers. How odd. The surface of stand-apart ads still presents a relatively unalloyed buy this thing, but the deep message of television with regard to these ads looks to be that Joe Briefcase's ontological status as just one in a reactive watching mass is in a deep way false, and that true actualization of self would ultimately consist in Joe's becoming one of the images that are the objects of this great herd-like watching. That is, TV's real pitch in these commercials is that it's better to be inside the TV than to be outside, watching.
Psychology and mental health today is in danger, and psychologists are in danger to become the priests of industrial system. That is to say, to help people adjust to a system where they are supposed to produce and to consume in masses, in groups, directed by central organization and slogans, and yet at the same time not to be aware. They are dissatisfied with that. They suffer from it. They suffer from what the French already called in the 18th century la maladie du siècle, the illness of the century, from boredom, from the meaninglessness of life. Now, there is a danger in that they might get sick, that they might have manifest symptoms, that they might protest, that they might want to make life more meaningful. And then many psychologists come and say, you shouldn't be dissatisfied. If you are dissatisfied, that means you're neurotic. And we'll adjust you so that you accept a meaningless life without rebelling against it, without symptoms, and you will have a nice funeral anyway.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
And that's how business is actually done in almost all cases.
And make no mistake, irony tyrannizes us. The reason why our pervasive cultural irony is at once so powerful and so unsatisfying is that an ironist is impossible to pin down. All irony is a variation on a sort of existential poker face. All US irony is based on an implicit, I don't really mean what I say. So what does irony as a cultural norm mean to say? That it's impossible to mean what you say? That maybe it's too bad it's impossible, but wake up and smell the coffee already. Most likely, I think, today's irony ends up saying, how very banal to ask what I mean. Anyone with the heretical gall to ask an ironist what he actually stands for ends up looking like a hysteric or a prig. And herein lies the oppressiveness of institutionalized irony, the too successful rebel. The ability to interdict the question without attending to its content is tyranny. It is the new junta, using the very tool that exposed its enemy to insulate itself. This is why our educated teleholic friends' use of weary cynicism to try to seem superior to TV is so pathetic. And this is why the fiction-writing citizen of our televisual culture is in such deep doo. What do you do when postmodern rebellion becomes a pop cultural institution? For this, of course, is the second clue to why avant-garde irony and rebellion have become dilute and malign. They have been absorbed, emptied, and redeployed by the very televisual establishment they had originally set themselves athwart. Not that television is culpable for true evil here, just for a moderate success. This is, after all, what TV does. It discerns, decocts, and represents what it thinks US culture wants to see and hear about itself. No one and everyone is at fault for the fact that television started gleaning rebellion and cynicism as the hip, upscale, baby boomer imago populi. But the harvest has been dark. The forms of our best rebellious art have become mere gestures, shticks, not only sterile, but perversely enslaving. How can even the idea of rebellion against corporate culture stay meaningful when Chrysler Inc. advertises trucks by invoking the Dodge Rebellion? How is one to be a bona fide iconoclast when Burger King sells onion rings with "sometimes you gotta break the rules"? How can a new image fiction writer hope to make people more critical of televisual culture by parodying television as a self-serving commercial enterprise when Pepsi and Isuzu and FedEx parodies of self-serving commercials are already big business? It's almost a history lesson. I'm starting to see just why turn-of-the-century America's biggest fear was of anarchists and anarchy. For if anarchy actually wins, if rulelessness becomes the rule, then protest and change become not just impossible, but incoherent. It'd be like casting ballots for Stalin. How do you vote for no more voting? In fact, one of my gastroenterologist's unifying obsessions is this latter juxtaposition of parts of selves, people and machines, human subjects, and discrete objects. Lehner's fiction is, in this regard, an eloquent reply to Gilder's prediction that our TV culture problems can be resolved by the dismantling of images into discrete chunks we can recombine as we fancy. Lehner's world is a Gilder-esque dystopia. The passivity and schizoid decay still endure for Lehner in his character's reception of images and waves of data. The ability to combine them only adds a layer of disorientation. When all experience can be deconstructed and reconfigured, there become simply too many choices. And in the absence of any credible, non-commercial guides for living, the freedom to choose is about as liberating as a bad acid trip. Each quantum is as good as the next, and the only standard of an assembly's quality is its weirdness, incongruity, its ability to stand out from a crowd of other image constructs and wow some audience. Lehner's novel, in its amphetaminic eagerness to wow the reader, marks the far dark frontier of the fiction of image. Literature's absorption of not just the icons, techniques, and phenomena of television, but of television's whole objective. My gastroenterologist's sole aim is, finally, to wow, to ensure that the reader is pleased and continues to read. The book does this by 1. Flattering the reader with appeals to his erudite postmodern Welshmers, and 2. Relentlessly reminding the reader that the author is smart and funny. The book itself is extremely funny, but it's not funny the way funny stories are funny. It's not that funny things happen here, It's that funny things are self-consciously imagined and pointed out. Like the comedian stock, you ever notice how, or ever wonder what would happen if? Actually, Lehner's whole high imagist style most often resembles a kind of lapidary stand-up comedy.
Can one measure it in terms of a subjective feeling? Is this what, does it involve this essentially?
No, I think like with any other opinions about oneself, most of what people think about their well-being is delusion. There are many people today feel well because they take tranquilizers, or Benzedrine, or this, or that, or a drink, or they have to have fun, or they have to act in some obsessional way. What the statement people make about their own state of well-being or happiness are utterly unreliable.
If this subjective feeling is a poor criterion and illusory and deceptive one, can you give us a positive and accurate criterion? What does it involve?
I would say the intensity and clarity of awareness and response to the world. The lack of egocentricity, and at the same time, the intensity of energy and vitality.
We have 14 years until this event, measured on the calendar. And you know, a really common, ordinary way to describe the times that we're living in is that they're very, very chaotic, filled with acts of unspeakable evil, and at the same time, there's this sort of buzz and thrust of optimism, everything from a guy like Peter Schwartz talking about the long wave, the big booming economy, breakthroughs in you know, educational levels and qualities of life, but it's definitely a dynamic where you've got extremes of good and evil in that way. Would you talk a little bit about the relationship between that dynamic as we go forward and the novelty continues to climax?
Well, novelty is not necessarily good or nice. Novelty is complex. That's what it is. And so I see really a concatenation of tendencies and forces here at the end. It's only going to get weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly, even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction. So I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods, because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. So between now and 2012, the next 14 years, I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And now that they have happened, nobody even bothers to mention what a big deal it is. The fact that there is no such thing as the Soviet Union, people never talk about it anymore. But when I was a kid, the notion that that would ever change was beyond conceiving. So the good news is that as primates, we're incredibly adaptable to change. Put us in a desert, we survive. Put us in the jungle, we survive. Under Hitler, we survive. Under Nixon, we survive. We can put up with about anything, and it's a good thing because we're going to be tested to the limits. The breakdown of anything, and this is why the right wing is so alarmed, because what they see going on is the breakdown of all tradition, all order, all sanctioned norms of behavior. And they're quite right that it's happening, but they're quite wrong to conclude that it should be resisted or is somehow evil. The mushroom said to me once, it said, this is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse. And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation that will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion.
Would you look at that? Just look at that.
I can't pull it out either. I'd have to drill it.
Would you just look at it?
Yeah, it's set. It's the only mark.
I mean, just look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, just get a look at that.
A cop did that.
A cop. Oh, where is he? I'd like to look at him.
Yeah, went over it.
We're gonna find anybody.
But I just think personally, if you're having a fight with somebody, you should be able to say whatever you think is going to hurt this person the most. But I got to be politically correct and mad at the same time. Like if I'm driving and somebody crashes into me and they got one leg, I'm going to talk about the leg. Hey, you one-legged bastard. No wonder you can't brake. I hope you got some two-legged insurance.
I have you on camera. Yeah? Yeah? Hey! You! You are! You are! Hey, have fun with the cops. Have fun with the cops.
Look at that. We got Tesla. See that on there? You think that's a T for Tesla? That's Elon Musk's penis on the back of your car. You got so many people in America just driving cars with Elon Musk's penis on it.
Hey, go ahead. You know what they're gonna tell you? Go to hell.
Wow, you just cut that guy off. Oh, God.
I didn't see. He looked like he was way back there. I didn't know he was exiting. I thought he was just in the slow lane. Wow.
They may have made a mistake.
Made a mistake. I'm sorry. God.
Relax, man.
God, you gonna take my front end off? Got a camera right here, buddy. Look it. Try it.
And he comes out to kind of explain to her, you're not even in your lane of traffic. And she's like, oh, I want to go that way. I get out to explain exactly how stupid she is. And
what you doing? Huh? What you doing?
Get the Why the hell do I have to wait for you? You're driving the wrong way. What the is your problem? You don't know how to drive? Stop. She's like, well, I just wanted to make a left. Well, I said, you don't go into oncoming traffic to do that. I'm trying to get her off the road and out of the way. I'm trying to go northbound and get out of the way of the fire truck, which is now coming up behind the truck, behind me. You want to kill yourself? Go kill yourself. Get out of the way. There's a fire truck. Oh, she's so stupid. And now look, there's another car. That car is going against traffic as well. And I've got to find a way to get out of the way so this fire truck can make its way. Look at how long it takes this fire truck to get through this traffic because of that other person who is going head on into them.
Here's the thing. There's millions and millions of people in Los Angeles County here. And when everyone just kind of does their own thing, you know, like, hey, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna park in the middle of the road. Hey, I'm gonna drive slow in the fast lane. Hey, I'm gonna drive fast in the slow lane. When so many people drive like that, honestly, I'm impressed that we don't have more accidents. I'm impressed that there's just not, I'm surprised that there just aren't idiot wrecks everywhere. I'm surprised it's not Mad Max, really. I mean, sometimes it does get Mad Max, but for the moment it's not.
Tonight, Bill, a routine commute home turned in seconds into abject terror with gunfire and hundreds of passengers trapped underground or running for their lives. One man was shot in the head with a gun police say he first pulled. It was madness on the A train. The two men scuffled briefly on the northbound A train, but some passengers just stayed in their seats until the older of the two men pulled a gun. For hundreds of people on two separate trains, a routine commute home changed suddenly tonight with the deafening echo of gunfire underground.
Where's the NYPD? Oh my God! Close the door! Close the door!
Passengers crouched down to avoid the gunman firing in a car just across the platform.
As I'm coming out, you hear pops, like 3 or 4 shots, pop, pop, pop.
Usually, Dr. Fromm, we reserve the word insane for individuals. Do you think it's possible that some societies might be insane?
I have a shopping addiction. You wouldn't understand.
Oh, try me, Bree.
It was so hard growing up in the Long Beach area. I just wanted to take the 105 and get the hell out of there. I wanted to pass the airport and continue on to La Cienega. That was my dream. But that dream ended when I checked in at the Yucca Valley Treatment Center for Shopping Disorders. On the Palms Highway, across from the Del Taco.
Mom, just give me a Pepsi, please. All I want is a Pepsi. And she wouldn't give it to me. All I wanted was a Pepsi. Just one Pepsi. And she wouldn't give it to me. Just a Pepsi. She would...
She explains why they risk going into the Walmart despite their bloody appearance.
We considered the fact that we might be questioned why we were covered in blood, but then we decided it's Walmart. So they're allowed to. There are pictures of people that are pretty much naked at Walmart. So nobody looks twice.
I hate to say this, but this place is getting to me. I think I'm getting the fear.
Nonsense. We came here to find the American dream. Now that we're right in the vortex, you want to quit? You must realize, man, we found the main nerve.
That's what gives me the fear.
Look.
What?
There's 2 women fucking a polar bear.
Don't tell me those things. Not now, man.
Now this is a superior machine. 10 grand worth of gimmicks and high-priced special effects.
Nothing, I want nothing.
Dr. Fromm, is it possible for a man to remain sane in today's world?
Nothing, I want nothing.
Morty, if we're gonna survive tonight, you're gonna need to harness your repressed rage.
I don't have any!
Spoken like a person with repressed rage.
I believe I can touch the sky.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bike lane! Fuck off! Wrong way, idiot. Wrong way, idiot. Hello, hello, use your eyes! Wrong way, fucktards! Wrong way, idiot. Wrong way, idiot. Wrong way, dumbass!
No, no.
Put it in your mouth.
No.
Oh, yeah.
1 cup, 2 cup,
No.
3 cup, 4
Yes.
cup, 5
There's 1
cup,
cup.
5 times double gulp.
It's
Fuck
only
me.
1 cup.
No.
There's only 1 lid.
You have to go.
There's only
You
one
have
place
to
for
go.
a straw.
No.
It's only 1 cup.
Use the double gulp cup for the fucking Slurpee. This right here. This is Slurpee cup. You
do
use this
every time. Every time you make a big deal about it, I always pay for it. What's wrong? You want to be my friend? Let's be friends.
This one is the Slurpee cup.
I don't care about your Slurpee cup. Look what you did. You made a mess.
Сейчас и день.
Хочу отдыхать, я на работе всю ночь, а?
Все, не ругайтесь.
Я здесь сплю.
Хорошо.
Ночью не живу, а?
Я не знал,
Ты
что
не
вы
сделаешь, что творишь, я каждый раз езжу здесь.
редко очень.
Опять телефон.
Не ругайтесь, пожалуйста.
Я площадку, да, прямо уже...
Здесь нету площадки, а вы можете стать спокойно. Все, до свидания.
Yeah, hard to tell. I mean, it is a beautiful car, really, all things considered. As you said, a high-performance car, a 2019 Corvette, and we have seen what this car can do. We saw speeds as fast as 160 miles an hour. We'll see if he pops out the other side here. But I'm also keeping an ear on the scanner just in case he made a turn that I didn't see. It is, Colleen, and it's the underground parking structure for the Bank of America located on 3rd and Hope. And it is in that structure where officers last saw that Corvette drive into it, at least. But they are yet to locate that blue Corvette and its driver. That driver wanted for a dangerously high-speed chase out of Pomona that made its way on several of our freeways, and the search is still on for that driver.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but your son is a genius.
Oh, don't worry, Scro. Now there are plenty of tards out there living really kick-ass lives. My first wife was tarded. She's a pilot now.
I need for you to be serious for a second here, okay? I need help.
There's that fag talk we talked about. All right, so that'll be this many dollars.
Brought to you by Carl's Jr.
Lehner's attempt to respond to television via ironic genuflection is all too easily subsumed into the tired televisual ritual of mock worship. Entirely possible that my plangent cries about the impossibility of rebelling against an aura that promotes and attenuates all rebellion says more about my residency inside the aura, my own lack of vision, than it does about any exhaustion of US fiction's possibilities. The childish gall actually to endorse single entendre values, who treat old, untrendy human troubles and emotions in US life with reverence and conviction, who eschew self-consciousness and fatigue. These anti-rebels would be outdated, of course, before they even started. Too sincere, clearly repressed, backward, quaint, naive, anachronistic. Maybe that'll be the point, why they'll be the next real rebels. Real rebels, as far as I can see, risk things, risk disapproval, accusations of sentimentality, melodrama, credulity, willingness to be succored by a world of lurkers and starers who fear gaze and ridicule above imprisonment without law. Who knows? Today's most engaged young fiction does seem like some kind of lines ends end. I guess that means we all get to draw our own conclusions. Have to. Are you immensely pleased?
It's like you're programmed from an early age. You know, you don't necessarily think like, oh, my childhood was shaped by marketers, but it absolutely was.